Aren't we grateful for music?
Oh, yes.
No. Let's sing a creative song together, huh? Goes like this. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Do that again. And finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way. You can add some harmony. And finding my way, finding my way, finding my way, oh, finding my way, finding my way back home. Yeah, finding my way, finding my way. I'm finding my way, finding my way, finding my way, finding my way back home. Let me go to the second part. Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? You can harmonize this too. Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? See how fun this is going to be? Don't you want to have a couple percussion instruments? I brought toys. What would you like, James? Do you want to take this one? What are you looking for? A drum. A drum is yours. I have shakers. I have salsa. Anybody want a shaker? We go a shaker.
Oh, good. Go, Beth Davis. There you go.
I heard anybody was over
Way in the back, way in the back.
girl's sunglasses.
Good thing I bought the good one. Well, meet me halfway, for heaven's sakes. Do I look like I need exercise? Yes. All right. So we'll get going, and let's start this side doing the Finding My Ways. And you'll keep the Finding My Ways going, and then I'll bring you on the O River, okay? And then I'm going to add a couple other parts that the choir is going to add. And if you hear one and you're like, oh, I want to do that one too, just skip over, and then I'll switch you. And we'll switch sides, and we'll do it for a little while, not too long, because we have a sermon to do. Here we go, starting right over here. 2, ready. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. You're gonna keep that going. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back You're brilliant.
It's hard to follow that. We could keep going all morning, huh? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Olympia Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Our community envisions an interconnected world that is loving, just, and healthy. We commit to live out our mission to welcome and wonder, embrace and empower, bridge and become. Thank you for joining us today. You are welcome here just as you are. Whatever beliefs sustain you, whomever you love, however you understand and express your identity, and in all the ways you are still becoming the person you will be. My name is Liz Clement. I use she and they pronouns. I am a white woman with dark brown hair, wearing a mustard yellow sweater and a black shirt today. And I'm a member of the worship arts team here. Leading worship with me today is our wonderful Troy Fisher, our music director. We're joined by our Reverend Mary Gear, and also a wonderful guest today, Peter Jabin. Peter is a licensed mental health counselor and a trained pastoral psychotherapist who has traveled down the road from his home in Seattle to join us this morning. As to our usual business, and there's a lot of it this morning, there's a few things you should know about the service. We're streaming live on Zoom and YouTube, and the service is being recorded. For those here in the sanctuary, you can see the sometimes accurate and always fabulous subtitles Zoom gifts us on the screen in front and on your own Zoom screens if you're joining from home. Over here, we have fluffy chairs and a nice rocker so everyone can be comfortable, and fun things to do to keep your hands busy if you would like that. We're a multi-generational community, and we value our young ones. Kids, babies, and teens of all ages are welcome in the sanctuary. There's also nursery care and a story time program for children down the classroom wing during today's service. And the youth in middle and high school have youth group at 11:30 after the service today. We're grateful for the many hands that helped make worship happen this morning. Thank you to all who contribute in so many ways. After the service, everyone will have the chance to discuss reflection questions offered by our wonderful speaker, Peter. For those online, we invite you to go into a breakout room for a virtual coffee chat. For those in person, please feel free to stay for coffee and fellowship in the Commons. There's no after-service forum today, but please return on-site at 1:30 p.m. for an in-person Introduction to Grief ritual workshop, also brought to us by Peter. I myself plan to come back to the service, to church this afternoon for the workshop, and if it speaks to you at all, I hope that I'll see you there. Looking ahead, next Sunday, March 31st, following the worship service, we will hold an Easter egg hunt down at the park, Bury Park, just down East End Street here, for all interested children. Kids should bring a basket and be dressed for whatever the weather is doing outside. We never know these days. We're collecting prizes and treats now, so please bring those donations to Anissa in the Spirit Play classroom between now and Easter morning. And the following Sunday, on April 7th, the Healthy Congregations team will host speakers from the Dispute Resolution Center for a training on how to communicate to connect. It's a skill-building workshop to help build bridges across differences. A light lunch will be provided before the workshop, which will be from noon until 2 p.m. Come join us for growth and fellowship. Last, we are well on our way with the stewardship campaign towards our goal this month. As of yesterday, there were 153 pledges, committing a total of $392,104. Thank you so much to all of you who have pledged so far. We hope to finish receiving pledges in the next few weeks so we can plan the budget for next year. And if you have not pledged yet, or if you have questions, feel free to visit the stewardship table out in the Commons this morning after the service, or you can visit the website at the link in the chat. So these are just a few of the many, many things happening at OUUC these days. Check out the Tuesday update or the website ouuc.org for the most up-to-date information. Now, let us open our hands and minds and our hearts as we prepare for worship. It is good to be together. This morning, we join Unitarian Universalist congregations around the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith tradition. If you are online and have a chalice or candle with you, please join us as we light our chalices together with the words of Laurence Cole. We kindle this flame, honoring the doorways in our souls, the windows through which we gaze at one another, the balconies where we catch glimpses of sky, the thresholds we stand on this morning, wondering, hoping, fearing, dreaming.
Good morning. I'm Peter Jabin. I use he, him pronouns, and I am delighted to be here this morning. I would like to invite you to join in our opening words, which are adapted from Lament with Earth by the Many in conjunction with BTS Center in Maine. We are here we are, on this planet, at this moment, praying together, breathing together here. And God says, this is good. This is supremely good. We are here we are. We humans, not just on earth, but of earth, made from dust, born of soil, shaped of mud, children of earth, siblings of soil, together here. And God says, this is good. This is supremely good. Here together, however we can be, hands and hearts and heads, humans of hummus, formed from living, breathing soil. We are living, breathing souls on and of the earth. And God says, this is good. This is supremely good.
I invite you to rise in body and our spirit, and let's sing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning. If you're joining us online, the words can be found in the chat.
This month is stewardship season here at OUUC, where we make pledges of financial support for this community. Stewardship is both a practical act and a spiritual practice. It takes all of us to support this congregation we love and to provide the resources that pay our staff and our bills. Joining in our individual resources to do this is a profound act of community. Each stewardship season, we have an annual opportunity to pause, to notice what we value, and to give as an expression of gratitude for what we have received. Each Sunday, a different member of the OUUC community will share a brief testimonial about something they have found here and valued. Today's testimony will be shared by our own Alex Steffens.
Hi, I'm Alex, yes, from Zoom. And I prefer they, them pronouns. I'm Caucasian and have short blonde hair with an undercut, and today I'm wearing a green sweater with a moose. I was raised in a religious tradition where women were not considered equals, and there was no differentiation made between being queer and being a pedophile. I was forced in conversion therapy, where I was taught that who I was at my core being was an abomination, dirty, and sinful. I spent a lot of time in a lot of my life in conflict with myself until I found OUUC. Little known fact, I actually started attending here 1 year before Reverend Mary. Right? A lot of people are surprised. It was an interesting time to learn about the congregation, the people, and how they viewed the world. Given my religious past, I had trust issues and I kept a low profile, lingering out in the commons during meetings, over by the coat closet, tucked in that corner with that little coffee table. And in that corner, before Mary was even a candidate, I listened. I listened to your discussions, your disagreements, your values, and your goals for yourself as a congregation. I started falling in love with the people. But as we all know, the spiritual leader can make or break a congregation, so I waited to see who you all chose. And just so you know, I liked your choice. So despite quietly loving you and agreeing with your choice of leadership, I was still struggling to be present because of the pain in my past. So when a class came up called Healing Your Religious Past, I immediately registered. The support and love that I received in that class marked this religious institution as different, a place for the broken to find their wholeness, and your congregation became my congregation. During the pandemic, as Reverend Mary blessed the LGBTQ+ community during Pride, I have never felt such a deep level of self-acceptance. No longer a secret to be hidden and ashamed of. I don't think I'll ever not cry when Troy sings How Could You Ever. I found the strength to come out to my family as queer, and I transitioned to my full self, Alex. And I promised myself that if I couldn't be my true, authentic self in this space, that I didn't belong here. It's been over 5 years, and I'm still here. So thank you for your part in creating this safe and sacred space.
Each Sunday, we engage in the spiritual practices of generosity and gratitude by joining together in service to our community to do something greater than ourselves. We each have the power to share, and when we combine our gifts to create an offering, together we are able to do more than any of us can do alone. We also express our gratitude for the gifts that life has given us, for the network of relationships in which we live, and for the presence of this community. If you are new or visiting us for the first or second time, you are our guest, and we do not expect you to contribute. However, if you are moved to be part of our offering, what you share will be most gratefully received. The offering collected here does two things today. It helps to support the ongoing work of OUUC in this congregation, which is also supported by our regular pledges. The offering also supports an organization that serves our community in harmony with our Unitarian Universalist values. Our Share the Plate organization for March and April is the Hawk Foundation for Research and Education in African Culture, which dedicates itself to the promotion and education holistic health, and trauma healing of the African American community, with recognition that when one is healed, it touches all around them. The Hawk Foundation provides African and African American music and history education, building confidence and community among young people in our area. May the offering now be generously given, as it is most gratefully received.
I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, and together we share, and from this we live.
Thank you so much for your generous gifts in all the ways that you share them. We came together this morning bringing all that is in our hearts, in our lives, and in our world. Let's open our hearts to the complexity of life as we place stones in the water of community. You will hear a drumbeat as we share today. It brings into our awareness that our individual hearts beat, and together we create the heartbeat of our community. So right now, let's just take a deep breath together. In and out. And let's open our hearts to receive the complexity of all that is in our lives and our world today. In the Christian tradition, today is Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week that ends with Easter Sunday. The ancient story tells of the entry of Jesus into Jerusalem with celebration and song. The story of this week is also one of connection and service, denial and betrayal, loss and grief, resurrection and hope. The entirety of the human condition in the story of 1 week. This week, may we be tender with ourselves and each other as we live our human story. And we offer gratitude once again to the OUUC Sewing Ministry for another batch of beautiful quilts that grace our sanctuary. You can just ooh-ah for a minute if you want. Aren't they lovely? They hung them just last Saturday so we can enjoy the color that helps us welcome spring. Thank you to the many hands that create and share such beauty. For those joining us online today, I invite you to share from your heart by entering in the chat. Those in the sanctuary will be able to see your sharing on the screen. And for those in person today, I invite you to come forward if there's something you would like to bring into this community. You may place a stone in the water as you hold your sharing in your heart. It works best if you come up from the side aisle and return by the center aisle. So let's hear the heartbeat of our community as we join our hearts and open our hearts to all that is to be shared. We'll place a stone in the water for all that has been shared online, shared from the heart. And one more stone placed in the water for all that we hold in our hearts and that remains unspoken this morning. Let's take a moment now to harmonize our bodies and our breath. So please be in whatever way is comfortable for you to hum. So in a moment, I'm going to start humming, and I invite you to just join in when you're ready. Just pick a note and hum. Change your note or stay on the same one. Harmonize. Just hum and enjoy the vibrations that we will create together. And for those online, please join in the humming. I am certain that your vibrations can be felt in the interconnected web that connects us all. So I invite you to place your hand on your heart or on your belly so you can feel the vibrations in your body as you hum. And we'll hum for a bit, and when that ends, we'll be in silence for a moment together.
Our first reading this morning is from the 12th chapter of the book of Job. Ask the animals, and they will teach you. Ask the birds of the sky, and they will tell you. Speak to the earth, and it will instruct you. Let the fish in the sea speak to you. For the life of every living thing is in God's hands, and the breath of every human being.
And this from The Dream of the Earth by geologian Thomas Berry. These words were written in 1988. What do you see when you look up at the sky at night, at the blazing stars against the midnight heavens? What do you see when the dawn breaks over the eastern horizon? What are your thoughts in the autumn when the leaves turn brown and are blown away? Or when you look out over the ocean in the evening, what do you see? Many earlier peoples saw in these natural phenomena a world beyond ephemeral appearance, an abiding world, a world imaged forth in the wonders of the sun and the clouds by day and the stars and planets by night, a world that enfolded the human in some profound manner. This other world was a guardian, teacher, healer, the source from which humans were born, nourished, protected, guided, and the destiny to which we returned. We have lost our connection to this other, deeper reality of things. Consequently, we now find ourselves on a devastated continent where nothing is holy, nothing is sacred. We no longer have a world of inherent value, no world of wonder, no untouched, unspoiled, unused world. We think we have understood everything, but we have not. We have used everything. By developing the planet, we have been reducing Earth to a new type of barrenness. Scientists are telling us that we are in the midst of the 6th extinction period in Earth's history. No such extinction of living forms has occurred since the extinction of the dinosaurs some 65 million years ago. The ecological age fosters the deep awareness of the sacred presence within each reality of the universe. There is an awe and reverence due to the stars and the heavens, the sun and all heavenly bodies, to the seas and the continents, to all living forms of trees and flowers, to the myriad expressions of life in the sea, to the animals of the forests and the birds of the air. To wantonly destroy a living species is to silence forever a divine voice.
Greetings of peace and solidarity from my home congregation, First United Methodist of Seattle, and the circle of grief mentors and grief tenders who are doing juicy, subversive work throughout the Puget Sound. It is a joy to be with you this morning. I'm so grateful for the invitation. Thank you, Reverend Mary. And I want to take the opportunity to remember and acknowledge the Reverend Duncan Littlefair, a remarkable Unitarian Universalist minister in Grand Rapids, Michigan, who, quite unbeknownst to me, to my 10-year-old self, first awoke my passion for the spiritual journey and a religious vocation in this grand Romanesque church in Grand Rapids. Holding the pulpit was this giant eagle, and he would grasp its wings, and every word. I cannot sufficiently express my gratitude for what he awoke in me, and I dedicate my reflection this morning to his memory. The title of my message is Orthopathy, Right Suffering in the Great Unraveling. And I want to begin with this odd word, orthopathy. We are all familiar with orthodoxy, prescribed or right thinking, and I trust there is a very healthy skepticism for this concept in this congregation. You may even be familiar with orthopraxy, right practice or right action. But this other word might be new to you as it was new to me last year, orthopathy. Ortho, right, correct. Pathos, suffering or emotion, right, suffering. And I want to offer this idea and perhaps the experience to you this morning for your consideration. Now, perhaps you may remember this image when it first appeared. Do you remember this? Can somebody name the year? 1969. I think 68, 69. I must admit I was 3 or 4 years old. So I don't know that I remember seeing it for the first time, but we all know this image of the Earthrise over the moon. This is the first time in 4.5 billion years of evolution that Earth ever beheld her own image. That Earth saw herself for the first time in 4.5 billion years through our eyes, her children. What an incredible, miraculous, long-awaited event. And what did she see? What does she see? What do we see in this moment? For it's the same moment, geologically. It's the same moment, 1968 and now, there's no difference. It's a fraction of a second. What does she see but unspeakable beauty and a world out of balance? In the span of my lifetime, since 1960, Earth's human population has increased from 4 billion to 8 billion. In my lifetime, we have doubled. During the same period, the body count for Earth's sixth mass extinction has grown to include something on the order of 70% of all wildlife, 80% of big fish in the sea, and upwards of 75% of all insects. The majority, 70 to 90% of the warm water tropical coral reefs that exist today will disappear, even if global warming is constrained to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But in 2023, global temperatures breached 1.5 degrees Celsius for a record 12-month period. And February 2024, last month, you heard, was the hottest month in human history, a full 1.77 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial temperatures. And annual emissions of greenhouse gases continue to increase year over year. Simply consider this sobering statement from NASA, not known to be a reactionary organization. The effects of human-caused global warming are happening now, are irreversible on the timescale of people alive today. It's easy to let that go past. Are irreversible on human timescales and will worsen in the decades to come. There's no equivocation here. And I won't even begin on the parallel socioeconomic, political manifestations of the climate crisis that constitute, another new word, the polycrisis. For all that we are experiencing these days is of one piece, is inextricably interconnected. I almost want to apologize to you for speaking these facts, for putting some flesh on what Joanna Macy has dubbed the Great Unraveling. But as the poet William Stafford says, it is important that awake people be awake, for the darkness around us is deep. You know this. Of course, we know this. We know all of this. And It's important to speak it out loud to each other again and again. Because these realities call us to right suffering, to orthopathy, to right suffering. It is absolutely crucial for our personal well-being, for our collective well-being, for the well-being of the utterly interconnected and profoundly sentient organism that we call Gaia, Earth, that we encounter the full reality of what is unfolding in our world, that we feel the feelings that are appropriate and reasonable responses to these realities, and that we grieve. This is not all that is required of us, but it is an essential first step in order to remain fully human in the midst of all that is unfolding. Heck, forget fully human for a moment, simply to remain standing, right? Therapist and author Laurence Cole puts it this way: the death, the loss of freedom, the fear, the sickness, the anger, the polarization, the scarcity, the pain, it feels hard because it is hard, and it has been hard. Certainly, we do not want to make our home inside of grief, but let us be clear, unless we make room for the reality of our entire human experience, grief will insist on taking over the whole house. Grief will insist on taking over the whole house if we do not give it its due. So what is the appropriate work of grief? Why is it so important? What does grieving accomplish? To answer that, I hope you will forgive me for a rather dense citation, and my apologies if I am oversighting, but there is so much good work happening in this area these days, it's very hard not to. This is from Ashley Consolo-Willocks, who is with the Climate Change Adaptation Research Group at McGill University in Canada. Need to do some translation. She speaks Canadian, not English. The paper is Climate Change as the Work of Mourning or Grieving. And she says, in mourning, we not only lose something that was loved, but we also lose our former selves, the way that we used to be before the loss. We are changed internally and externally by the loss in ways that we cannot predict or control, and in ways that may be disorienting, surprising, or completely unexpected. Through this mourning as transformation, we are opened to others, human, animal, vegetal, and mineral, and continually exposed and vulnerable to these bodies through the potential for loss and our subsequent grieving. These responses to human and other than human loss can leave us changed in ways we cannot previously have imagined, and hold the possibility of leaving us more open to other bodies, to grief, and to our transcorporeal connections with all bodies, species, and life forms. That's a lot. Simply put, the work of grieving connects us and transforms us in ways that we cannot fully predict, control, or understand. Further, grieving gives us access to a power and vitality that is not of us, that is from beyond us. By way of illustration, I would note the present liturgical context for my tradition, for the Christian tradition. As Reverend Mary noted earlier, today is Palm Sunday. We stand on the verge of Holy Week, the commemoration of Christ's Passion. I dare say that many, if not most, Christians move liturgically from the supposed triumphal entry of Palm Sunday, all the waving of palm fronds and Jesus on a colt and all that business, to the triumph of Easter Sunday's resurrection, triumph to triumph. Such practice completely guts the myth and misses the point of orthopathy, of right suffering that is encountered and rehearsed in Jesus' betrayal, crucifixion, and death. A suffering that, as expressed in this myth, we understand God to share in, to enter into, and to unfold through. Here's my take on the Easter miracle that gave rise to the Christian tradition. Jesus' friends and followers shared their traumatic experience of Jesus' death and fully grieved their loss. In that grieving, they were restored to life, to hope, to faith. For grief is the alchemy that transmutes the experience of trauma and loss into eternal life, not life in the hereafter, somewhere else, another time. Eternal life, full life, the depth of life, the fullness of life. Grief transmutes loss and trauma into the fullness of a human soul. What we have in the Gospels is not Jesus' experience, but the experience of Jesus' friends and followers. They encountered their grief and moved through it in bodies and in community. They told their stories of what happened in their life with Jesus, in their loss of Jesus. They told these stories over and over again to whoever would listen. And in this, they came to experience Jesus as risen, as somehow still living among them and within them. And this experience, not idea, not some belief, this experience gave them the power to resist and overcome the domination, oppression, and trauma of the empire in which they lived. This suggests why grief is so important for us today. For we have forgotten grief in our culture. We have all but lost our capacity for grieving. Grief is a lost art, and this loss is a crisis of our collective soul life. Our forgetting of the critical importance of grief as the shared work of community and not a privatized experience, something to go off and have 3 days bereavement leave and then talk with your therapist about it, and that's enough. That's what we do with grief, typically. It is shared work of community. Our forgetting of this has everything to do with the cultural, political, and ecological crises, the polycrisis in which we find ourselves. Occurring beyond and outside of therapy, beyond and outside of language, communal grieving begins to reweave our profoundly frayed social fabric. I have recently adopted the descriptor grief mender to honor this sense of stitching the wound and reweaving the fabric. At the same time, grief as communal practice opens a threshold across which we can move from psychic collapse into a revitalizing responsiveness. The point is to move out of our heads, out of the analytic and into our bodies, into our hearts, into our souls, to experience once again connection to the village, to the earth, and to our ancestors. All of this with grief in our hands as the solvent to erode what immobilizes us and to liberate us into action that flows from love.
Another reading. This is a poem entitled Bearing Witness by Laura Weaver. Sometimes we are asked to stop and bear witness. This the elephants say to me in dreams as they thunder through the passageways of my heart, disappearing into a blaze of stars. On the edge of the 6th mass extinction, with species vanishing before our eyes, we'd be a people gone mad if we did not grieve. This unmet grief, an elder tells me, is the root of the collective illness that got us here. His people stay current with their grief. They see their tears as medicine, and grief as a kind of generous willingness to simply see, to look loss in the eye, to hold it tenderly, what is precious, to let the reins of the heart fall. In this way, they do not pass on this weight of invisible mail bags for the next generation to carry. In this way, the grief doesn't build and build like sets of waves until at some point down the line, it simply becomes an unbearable ocean. We are so hungry when we are fleeing our grief, when we are doing all we can do to distract ourselves from the crushing heft of the unread letters of our ancestors. Hear us, they call. Hear us. In my dreams, the elephants stampede in herds, trumpeting, shaking the earth. It is a kind of grand finale, a last parade of their exquisite beauty. See us, they say. We may not pass this way again. What if our grief, given as a sacred offering, is a blessing, not a curse? What if our grief, not hidden away in corners, becomes a kind of communion where we shine? What if our grief becomes a liberation song that returns us to our innocence? What if our fierce hearts could simply bear witness?
In my dreams, the elephants stampede in herds, trumpeting, shaking the earth. It's a kind of grand finale, a last parade of their exquisite beauty. See us, they say, we may not pass this way again. What if our fierce hearts could simply bear witness? Every time. Weaver's poem reduces me to tears every time. It is an achingly beautiful expression of what drew me to Willicks's piece about climate change and mourning. For she is ultimately making a case for the grievability of the non-human, the more than human. She notes that we as humans have a long history of bodies that have been deemed unmournable in the polis, including the AIDS body, the homosexual body, the indigenous body, the trans body, the poor body, the black body, on and on. But she also considers a long list of disavowed, ignored, and unacknowledged deaths and losses among non-human bodies that include the degradation of forests and farmlands, the scarring of lands from tar sand projects, the leveling of mountaintops for mining, the pollution of rivers and lakes, the loss of forests to clear cutting, the melting of ice caps, the permanent loss of biodiversity through human-induced extinction, and the changes in lands all over the world because of climatic shifts and variability. And she argues, we can and should extend our mourning to the non-human as a way to recognize non-humans as fellow vulnerable entities and mournable subjects capable of suffering, for of course they are. Why? Well, firstly, because as my teacher, Francis Weller, is fond of saying, it is only good manners to extend this courtesy and compassion to our more than human siblings, to notice when they pass, when they fall and they pass. It's only good manners. which is to say that this move is important in order to heal our egregious arrogance and soul sickness that finds expression in the assumption that grief is reserved for somehow only truly applicable to the human, as we care to define human. This cultural norm is a consequence of the errors in our thinking that find expression in the disastrous ideas of human exceptionalism, as well as the idea of the separate, siloed individual. Horrible mistakes that we have made. There's so much that could be said here, but let it suffice for now to say that making the more than human fully grievable is in part about healing ourselves. But further, and this is Willock's again, the ability of mourning to return us to vulnerability and collective responsibility through recognition of the other is the very essence of the power of grieving. It returns us to vulnerability and collective responsibility. From this perspective, grief and mourning have the ability to mobilize, to galvanize, to cause conscious action through the recognition of others as fellow vulnerable beings. Through mourning, then, as we encounter the suffering and vulnerability of others, we come to recognize the non-human other as vulnerable, as grievable, as wholly deserving of the work and the labors of mourning. The labors of mourning, or again, to translate this into proper English, the work of grieving. What are these labors? What is this work? I would offer that the work of grieving is twofold. First, grieving proper, grieving itself. There is work in that. And here, again, I want to acknowledge my teacher, Francis Weller, and I commend his work to you. The Wild Edge of Sorrow is a great read on grief. As you may have sensed by now, I do not understand grieving as merely a feeling or an emotional state. In its fullest expression, grieving is communal ritual action. Ritual being any communal gesture done with emotion and intention that attempts to connect transpersonal energies for healing or transformation. The purpose of ritual is to help us become transparent to the transcendent. This is a phrase of Francis, which I love. It's the purpose of ritual is helping us to become transparent to the transcendent and to suture the tears in the experience of belonging resulting from the daily and cumulative injuries of being human. To suture, again, to mend the tears in belonging that result from the daily business of this being human. Injuries to ourselves, injuries to each other, injuries to the more than human world. We engage this communal work through what Francis calls practices of coherence. What we do here, singing, poetry, dancing, sharing meals, sharing dreams, small group interactions, large group ceremonies. These are practices of coherence, technologies, if you will, of communal grieving, which create a container in which we can enter into our active grieving with each other. Not talking about it, not doing group therapy with it, those are fine, but that's not what this is, but rather entering into and actively sharing our grieving with each other in real time. Such work helps us to cross thresholds from isolation into community, from numbness into orthopathy, right suffering, from dysregulated overwhelm and despondent collapse into a grounded, connected, embodied presence capable of witnessing, of feeling, and responding. Responding, this brings us to the second aspect of the communal work of grieving, which liberates us into the work of repentance, repair, and reconciliation. I'd offer in that order. Among the human family, yes, so much and desperately needed, but also and perhaps even more importantly at this time, among, as Mary Oliver puts it, among the family of things. It grows increasingly evident to me that the communal work of grief opens a portal into the potential experience of what I want to call the small I indigenous self, an experience of self, not an idea, an experience of self that is in keeping with a core truth found across faith traditions: we are one, all is one. Francis speaks of grief ritual as dropping us into an encompassing surround of darkness and mystery, a sacred terrain deep within the earth. He is pointing toward an ancient primordial territory, one that we carry deep within our very genes. It is in here, a territory that we have largely forgotten in our domestication, in our alienation from the earth. But with practice and willingness, grief ritual has the power to derange us, to reestablish the connection with and deliver us into this territory of grief. And in this landscape, it is possible to experience a sacred spiritual encounter beyond sectarian belief systems or even the absence thereof, to experience a sacred spiritual encounter with others, with the capital O other, and with our own enduring indigenous souls, ever and still native to this earth. And from this place, to act, to respond, to give ourselves to and for the life of the world, whatever that may mean, individually and collectively. This, I would offer, is what it means to be fully human in this utterly unprecedented moment in the history of our species. In conclusion, to encounter all of the death and loss, the violence, the tragedy that is evident in the world today, and to collapse under its weight, to collapse into the demand for certainty or into the desire for our own death, this is doomism. This is not right suffering. Rather, this is despair. An understandable response. Many of us are going there. But to encounter all of the death and loss and violence and tragedy that is evident in the world today, and to remain nonetheless firmly rooted in and devoted to the miraculous goodness of life, to fall to the ground and weep out of love and compassion, this is orthopathy, this is right suffering. And such suffering has the potential to empower us to do what is right, not because we are confident of a good outcome, but simply because, in keeping with Václav Havel's idea of hope, it is the right thing to do. And also, as Francis reminds us, because it is simply good manners.
Let's be in silence for just a moment together.
Let's rise and sing together hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home.
If you're online and have a chalice or candle, please join me as we extinguish our chalice with the words of St. Basil the Great from the 4th century BCE. O God, enlarge within us the sense of fellowship with all living things, brother beasts, sister trees, father rock, and mother seas, to whom thou gave us the earth as their home in common with us. We remember with shame that in the past we have exercised high dominion over them with ruthless cruelty, so that the voice of the earth, which should have gone up to thee in song, has been a groan of travail. May we realize that all creatures live not for us alone, but for themselves and for thee, and that they love the sweetness of life. Go in peace, go in joy, go in love.
wonderful job. Thank you. Great music making today.